When it comes to the origins of mankind, there are only two ways to look at it: evolution or creation. Now, most people have a pretty good understanding of the evolution theory. They get it, even though there are variations to that theory, as there are several variations to the theory of creation. So allow me to present to you all a very old and well-known story about the creation of man, the birth of civilization, the rise and fall of great kingdoms, and the constant battle between good and evil. I hope this will, in a way, help to put a few more pieces of the puzzle in their place as I present to you the Genesis in the Book of Jasher. And God said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness." And God created man in his own image. And God formed man from the ground, and he blew into his nostrils the breath of life. And man became a living soul, endowed with speech. And the Lord said, "It is not good for man to be alone. I will make unto him a helpmeet." And the Lord caused a deep sleep to fall upon Adam, and he slept. And he took away one of his ribs, and he built flesh upon it, and formed it, and brought it to Adam. And Adam awoke from his sleep, and behold, a woman was standing before him. Now, this is how the Book of Jasher, also known as the Book of the Upright, starts out. Notice how it skips over the creation of everything else and goes straight to man. This should tell you what this book focuses in on, because I believe the message in it is extremely valuable, whether it is truth or fiction. You have to admit, the stories of these ancient texts, the language, the way they are written, you expect any author to make writing errors. Where are those errors? Folks, this is a very difficult thing to do. Look at how big the Bible is. Who could write that? In Hebrew, by hand. Of course, I'm being jokey. There were multiple authors, but a lot of the work that was put into many of these ancient texts around the world, it is not an easy accomplishment to create any writing that has stood the test of time. Now, when it comes to the Book of Jasher, there is great skepticism about this book's authenticity. One of the reasons being, the only oldest surviving copy of the book is the 1625 Hebrew edition, which many believe it is a forgery created by the rabbis at that time to gain leadership over the scriptures. There are several problems with this book, another one being no one knows who wrote it. The only reason it may be a possible lost book of the Bible is because it is mentioned in the books of Joshua and Samuel. I always encourage using great discernment when investigating things, and with this, it should be no different. There are all these people who have spent a great deal of time to investigate this book, and the majority of them agree that the Book of the Upright does not seem to be a text that is misleading, but revealing. And what is this revelation? Well, as the story continues, and he said, "This is a bone of my bones, and it shall be called woman, for this has been taken from man. And Adam called her name Eve, for she was the mother of all living. And God blessed them and called their names Adam and Eve. in the day that he created them. And the Lord God said, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth." Now, here's what happened, folks. God placed these two in the Garden of Eden. Keep in mind, we don't really know how long Adam was around before Eve was created. Now, after placing them into the garden to dress and keep it, God commanded and told them, "From every tree of the garden you may eat, but from the tree of knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat. For in the day that you eat thereof, you shall surely die." Now, I would say that was a pretty reasonable request, wouldn't you? But the serpent that God had created with them came to incite them and transgress the command of God. You see, the serpent enticed and persuaded the woman to eat from the tree of knowledge. Now, why would she do something like that, knowing what would happen? But she hearkened to the voice of the serpent. She ate from the tree and took some for her husband to eat. So now, these two have done something they have never experienced before. They had done something that was wrong. Now, what's interesting about this is, even if Eve was suckered into doing this thing, how was she able to sucker Adam into doing the same thing, also knowing the consequences? See, this may have gone another way if Adam had asked for forgiveness. But nope, no apology, no "I'm sorry." Not only did he not apologize, he blamed God for creating Eve. Did you know this? And so God's anger was kindled against them, and he cursed them. He drove them out of the garden to till the ground. So they settled east of the garden and had 2 sons and 3 daughters. She named her firstborn son Cain and her second Abel. Cain was a tiller of the ground. Abel was a keeper of sheep. Now, when it came time to give an offering to the Lord, Abel offered up the best in his flock. But Cain didn't offer God his best stuff. So, of course, God was inclined to Abel. And fire came down from heaven and consumed his offering. He did not incline to Cain's crappy offering. Cain got jealous. So one day, the boys went to work in the fields. Cain caught one of Abel's sheep passing through the ground he just freshly plowed. Well, all hell broke loose, and the boys got into this big argument, and Cain threatened to kill Abel. And he did, with the iron end of his plowing tool. He, of course, tried to cover it up. He lied to God about it, and so he was sent to wander the earth towards the east of Eden, cursed till the day of his death. Now, in those days, Cain got to know his wife, and they had a son named Enoch. And Cain also began to build a city also called Enoch. And it was in the 130th year of the life of Adam upon the earth that he again knew Eve his wife, and she conceived and bare a son in his likeness and in his image. And she called his name Seth, saying, "Because God has appointed me another seed in the place of Abel, for Cain has slain him." Now when Seth turned 105, he had a son named Enosh. By the way, this is a time where the sons of men began to multiply, and many inherited the disease of transgressing and rebelling against God. They began to worship other gods, images made from brass, iron, wood, and stone. And the Lord caused the waters of the river Gihon to overwhelm them, and he destroyed and consumed them. And he destroyed the third part of the earth. Notwithstanding this, the sons of men did not turn from their evil ways, and their hands were yet extended to do evil in the sight of the Lord. So at this point, everyone has lost their mind. Now, when Enosh turned 90 years old, he had a son named Canaan. Canaan grew wise and reigned over the sons of men. He even ruled over spirits and demons. He knew through his wisdom that the Lord in the latter days would bring upon them the waters of the flood. So, Canaan wrote this down on tablets of stone and put them in his treasures. In those days, the men were getting pretty wild. They would have their wives drink a drought, rendering them barren, because they didn't want their wives to lose their figure after having a child. Turns out, the childbearing women appeared abominable to them, so they would attach themselves to the women who could not conceive. Now Cain, the son of Adam, was killed in a crazy story. And Mahalalel, the firstborn son of Canaan, at the age of 65, had a son named Jared. And when Jared reached the age of 62, he had a son, and his name was Enoch.